This is definitely a podcast I've done no work towards researching because I just want to chat with you, man. You're one of the more Renaissancean people that I know, if that's a word, and Renaissance men, whatever. You're a cool guy, and I feel like people would like to hear your insights. So,
thank you, brother. Well, you're always an inspiration to me. I mean, your kindness.
What a charmer you are.
No, your kindness, your work ethic, you're a family man. Speaking of a Renaissance man, that's you. So I'm always humbled and inspired when I have friends like you in my life. And
we should also preface by saying, thanks to you, not only do we have music for the show, but you also let me borrow your first DAW, if I'm using the correct terminology.
DAW.
To start
digital
this whole
audio
thing.
workstation.
Yeah, to start this whole shebang. So it's about time.
Well, it's amazing, because, there's a few comedians that I think John Mulaney always says it like as an adult, it is way easier to do nothing than actually do things. And in fact, like you ask a kid, what did they do for the weekend? And if it was nothing, they're like, we did nothing. If you ask an adult, they're like, they light up like, well, we did nothing this weekend.
Yeah.
So for you to just keep the podcast going, do all that, it's work. It's a love, but it's way easier not to do it than to do it. So I appreciate you putting in the time.
Well, you know what? It's funny you say that. It reminds me of two things. First of all, it's also one of those things where you talk to adults and you get out of this habit that we were all in as kids, where when you were a kid, you're like, what do you like to do? What do you like to play? Talk about fun stuff. And then you're an adult and you're like, how's work going? And it's so much of the conversation is just around boring, drab stuff. And then when you finally catch someone with, no, actually, how are you doing? Like, really, what do you as a person like to do? It throws people off. They're like, wait, what? You actually want to hear the answer? Like, you actually care? It sucks that's a lot of adults fall into that trap of only talking about work and boring shit.
Well, then I also see the other side of the coin to that, which is very detrimental for younger people right now, but we're all faced with it, which is living in such a digital world, right? I mean, you are a master of taking your children outside, letting them experience life, which is so important. But I think as adults, I see it in 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 60. I go down to Florida to visit my mom in the community. I see their Facebook. They're so inundated with these things. They feel that, my life is worthless because look at what everybody else is doing. And I need to show that I'm doing all these things. Meanwhile, you just need to connect. You need to connect with family and you need to connect with the physical world, in my opinion. And I think then we might see depression rates coming down. I know we're going on a completely different tangent now.
There's no plan. We're just chatting.
Right. But I feel that comes into play too when you're speaking with adults. They either feel like I gotta stick to the boring stuff, or I have to keep up because I'm not fulfilling my life because I am looking through a lens, through a filter of what other people are doing. And that's the balance and a challenge I think we find with adults and children right now in this new age and world that we're going into.
As you're saying this, I realize that we're at a unique age because we grew up at a time where like the internet was not a thing, and like we experienced a little bit of that old school childhood, and then we kind of blended in and learned our way through to where we are now. That's basically one of the reasons that I do the podcast still. I took a break after when the pandemic was happening. I'm like, I'm not going to do a podcast. I have to pay the bills. And then I started realizing how I missed the opportunity to have these kinds of conversations because as I've gotten older, I think as we all get older, it's hard, especially for guys, to make the time for social interactions. I have so many friends that it sucks, but I haven't seen in years, or I haven't talked to in a very long time. People that I genuinely love, and sometimes you have to just force it. I think women are typically better at that sort of thing, prioritizing that stuff.
Right. With men, I found that it becomes easier if you have a common thing that you like to do.
Yeah.
I have a group of guys that love to smoke cigars. I love to smoke a cigar. So I get to see them more often than my other friends, like in Nashville or around town, because we'll say, hey, it's Friday night, let's go grab a cigar, and you're kind of forced to sit around for 2 hours, 3 hours, and just talk and catch up and do things like that. Or I joined the men's group down here where we kind of get together and learn ham radios, some guys want to learn power tools, other guys want to learn fishing,
Cool.
Other guys want to work together. In the case of a tornado or a disaster, we can kind of communicate and all work together versus being alone on an island. So when you, I think, create an opportunity for men to get together to do fun things, they'll do it. If it's what was that old Family Guy? Real old Family Guy, like when Peter assumes to become a woman or have women tendencies, and he's calling Quagmire. He's like, "Hey, Quagmire, what are you doing?" And he's like, "I don't know. You called me. What do you want from me?" But as guys, we kind of do that. So we need fun activities. Let's go mountain climbing. Let's go rock climbing. Let's go to the range. Let's do these sort of things.
That's true. It's so true. Guys typically bond over something to do, and women typically bond over, I think, stereotypically emotional connections or social stuff. Listening to you talk reminds me how much I miss our talks, because you're one of the most like down to earth, normal friends I have, which is so funny because you're also so abnormal and in a great way. You know what I mean? Like you.
Thank you.
We should start. I guess we'll start here if we already started, but we'll start again here. Which is so funny because the way I met you is like you were a fucking rock star, right? I think we actually met or kind of hung out the first time. You were playing as the bassist for Secondhand Serenade, who had like a little blip as like being a thing, right? And so I meet you, and super down to earth, awesome guy, friends with our friends from Echo Movement, who we all love. We're at Dave and Steve's house. So I meet you, and you're on stage at, I want to say, what's that place on South Street? I think that's where you were playing. I think. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Somewhere in Philly.
Yeah. Yeah, in Philly, down in either Royal Cafe or I know which one you're talking about.
I'm blanking right. House. Oh my God, what's it freaking called? Anyway, playing at South Street, I think it was in Philly, and you're on stage. This freaking rock star guy we just met. And I'm like, wait, 2 seconds ago I'm talking to you and you're normal. Now you're on stage. You're like freaking rock star. But then you come back to it, and it's like full circle. Like you hanging out with dudes doing power tools, and you're I don't know if you could call yourself a prepper, but you're in that category, right? And so it's like you have so many different categories of life that you're really passionate about, and you seek excellence in, which is really cool, because talking about having friends that you have something in common with, you're a really cool person to talk to, because we have so much in common with, but then you also have so many things to connect on. Even if it's something I don't necessarily do, you have a level of expertise and mastery or above average knowledge of so many things that it's fascinating to chat with you,
The old saying is jack of all trades and a master of none.
Yeah.
That's totally me. I'm definitely not a master in anything, but I can get the job done, which also worked a lot when I was in the music industry. When you're starting out and you're in the lower levels and not in the big tier touring categories, they a lot of times need somebody who can wear a few hats. And I love my musician friends, and the really great ones normally are pretty good at just being musicians, and that's about it. So I never got hired for being an amazing bass player. And in fact, any of the gigs that I did, whether it was the first band with Lava, which I love that band, it was called Tony C and the Truth, Secondhand Serenade, bands down here in Nashville, they never required, amazing bass playing. It's basic bass playing. I could handle that. But hey, you need someone to help out with the driving. Oh, you need someone to help out with tour managing. Hey, you need someone to keep an eye out because the promoters or the record label is trying to get one over on you. I've had those conversations before where I'm looking at a budget going to the artist, this doesn't make sense at all. I mean, I ran a mortgage company. I managed a mortgage company. I did finance for a pharmaceutical research company. So once again,
of course you
jack
did.
of all trades, master of none. But but I could look at those things and just say, this doesn't add up. You
have the
might want to question this one.
You have the most interesting freaking resume out of almost anyone I know. Like, I'm trying to think of someone that tops you. I can't off the top of my head think of that. But stick to the music thing for a second, because we do have a lot of the people that listen. There are a lot of creative musician, artist type people. And as someone myself who is still trying to get better at playing music, it doesn't. It's not like, even though you're saying, okay, you're saying you're average and I'll believe you, blah blah blah, but you still have to get to a way above average level of playing to achieve the level of accolades, the level of mastery, etc. Right? So how did you get to that point? Was it as an obsession when you were a kid? How do you take it from a point of interest to where you are now?
So I think, boot camp, college boot camp was probably the best for me. I had a band in college called Jack Tripper. We played a lot. We played a lot around, Monmouth County and Asbury Park. And then very quickly I realized, you know what? There's not a big scene here. There's not a lot going on here. And where are we going here? Like, I always said, if I'm going to do something, I want to do it all the way. And my drummer at the time, he was actually just out this week here visiting, Guy Battaglia. Him and I had the same mindset. It's like a warrior mindset. When you do something, even if your skill level isn't there, keep working hard and get there. So pretty quickly we decided we're not going to get what we want out of, Asbury's beautiful right now. Back then it wasn't. This is 1997, 1998, 99.
Yeah.
No. So we would find all these fraternities and that our friends went to different schools. So University of Maryland, Delaware, we'd play at SIGNU, we'd go up to UMass, and we would book every weekend. And the band, we'd get a trailer, we'd get an RV, and we'd load everything up. We'd have to do contracts. We'd have to do budgets. So pretty quickly you learn, don't overthink anything. Do it right, get it done. So when I finally got the call in 2003, I was working at the pharmaceutical research facility over in Eatontown, doing financials for them. And I was just jonesing. I really I knew I needed to make money. I wanted to do that, but I really wanted to have like a band that I could, go out and tour the world with. And a great guitar player from the area, Chris Bono.
I'm friends with Chris for a long time.
Pedal board. Yeah, Chris, amazing guy. Back in the college days, when we would book all those shows, their band blew our band away. I knew that. Brown, amazing funk band. But we had the connection. So we would say, hey, we got this in the budget. Why don't you guys come to some of these colleges with us? We'll set up the PA, and you guys play a set, we play a set, and bring my college roommate who DJs too. So now we could throw in a DJ after for the parties.
Yeah.
So we had... And I took lessons from the bass player in Brown. So we kind of had that thing going on. And at that time, Bono knew, like, hey, John can lay it down on bass. He's not overthinking it. He knows how to put all these things together, and he can hang. It's like, you got to remember, when you're a musician, you're around people, those people that are in your band, a lot of time, more time than friends you might have known for 15 years. You'll get more time in 1 year with those guys. And that can either form an incredible bond and friendship, or it could be a disaster if you're not the right guy for that. So Chris felt very confident that, hey, this singer who looks like he's going to get a big deal is in his 20s. John's in his 20s, knows how to hang. We're all older, seasoned professionals. This guy wants someone that he can relate to. So he brought me in on that. And by having those years of boot camp, as I call them, nothing fazed me. Like, what do you guys need? What do you need to get done? I actually learned how to, record in a studio at that point. I had never done that. We had Pro Tools, the demos that this guy put together with Kyle, who was our producer, sounded so good that Lava Records finally said, however you guys want to record this, go and record it. So next thing you know, heading up the New York Thruway, and I'm at a barn and we're setting up shop for 3 months, and we're going to record a record. And the type of person I am, hey Kyle, how do you run that microphone? What can I help out with? How can I do that? Oh, how do you use Pro Tools? How do you do this? How do you do that? And just like a sponge, without being a pain, where can I help out? Oh, you guys are hungry? Let me go cook something for you. I'm also Italian, so I cook. I do all the cooking here. So it became like a team effort. It became very fun. Fast forward towards the end of the process, my singer at the time, God rest his soul, he just passed away this year. He had, just like many, many great talents, had a lot of mental issues going on. So at that time, he freaked out and fired the producer because he was worried about his vocal. And I'm not a singer, but I know a lot of singers have that. When that spotlight's on them, especially in big pressure, they tend to freak out a little bit. So he got rid of the producer, and all that's left was me and the guitar player, his best friend from home at the time, who never recorded a song before, to finish the record up. So I had put in a couple months of learning. Next thing you know, we were waking up at 3 a.m. when he would finally wake up, get a vocal take, he'd go back to sleep, and we were comping vocals all day, getting them ready. Once again, immerse yourself. Boot camp. Just get in there. Just do it. And had I never done that, the years after that, my studio over here, I wouldn't know what to do. I do have a lot of people always asking me, people that might be listening to this, how do I do this? How do I do that? I just had my cousin come. She's 23. She's living up in Boston. Now I want to get into music production. Come out to Nashville. I'll show you a couple things. But ultimately, I think what we all have to do, and it comes easy to me, but we have so many resources. We have YouTube, we have videos, we have so many great people posting things all the time that there's no excuse why you can't go and immerse yourself in the basics. And then you go to someone that can help you and realize that their time is valuable. They want to help you, but they also want to see that you're doing the work. It's very easy to just say, how do I do this? You got to teach a man how to fish, not catch the fish for them and give it to them. That's my opinion. So for anyone who really wants to do things, I say immerse yourself, take it as far as you can take it. And along the way, if you're putting in the work, you're going to find people around you that want to help out. But if you just want to say, hey, how do I do this? And give me the answers, it never really works that way. Oh, how do I paint a picture?
Right.
Well,
right.
All right. Well, you might want to get these kind of brushes. I like this paint better than that paint. But you gotta get in there. You gotta get the paintbrushes dirty and get on canvas and start it. You can't just ask, hey Jay, how do I paint a picture?
I think a lot of people, when they ask those type of questions, some of them want to learn it. I feel like on a deeper level, intuitively, people more so just want to remove the magic from it. They want to make it feel attainable. And for instance, people might say, I want to learn to draw, but like you said, they're not willing to put the work in. But it's not really that they want to draw. They'd find more pleasure if I said, here's how you draw an eyeball, or here's how you draw a dog. That they would want to know those things so they could almost check it. We all do this to some extent. You want to check it off like, oh, okay, now I get it. As right. Opposed to the artist, the musician, the true artist, the true musician, who doesn't just want to have a couple tricks up your sleeve, but you want to innovate. You want to make something that didn't exist before. You don't want to just pick up a guitar and learn a couple things on tablature and say, okay, I could play guitar. I could play a few things.
Right.
It's a different level. It's like you were talking about Chris, our mutual friend Chris Bono. I think I must have known that you knew him. I just forgot. But Chris is one of the most talented guitarists. He was actually on the podcast also. I don't know if you remember that or knew that. He's also one of the biggest dicks I know. I was actually just texting Chris, if you're listening, you're a freaking dick. I was just texting him a couple of weeks ago or a month ago. He was texting me. He asked me a question, and then I answered him in a way that he didn't like, and he gave me the most dickhead response. And I just didn't even respond to him for about a month and a half. I'm like, you're such a prick, dude. And then the other day I responded like, hey, Chris, what's up, man? I'm just reviewing this text message thread we had, and even though I can be very sarcastic, I'm a Jersey guy. I got it in me.
Mhm.
I'm also equal parts really sappy, insecure artist, and just wondering where we stand because you kind of came off in this harsh way. And he gave me a total dickhead response, but it was one of those ones where I'm like, okay, we're cool.
Yeah.
But it was interesting in talking to him on both the podcast and just throughout the years of knowing him. So much of the artist's path, as proven by him and you and me, is really being able to tap into that left brain, that logical, analytical side. So I'm not sure where this question is going to go, but let's just see. So I would love for you to talk about how you balance that right-left brain thing, because I feel like in order to pursue the arts or music or any sort of craft like that, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like you have to have some of that right-brained, just like wondering where this is going to go, being able to tap into the zone and feeling like it's coming from somewhere else and feeling like you're a bigger part of something, that whole woo-woo side of it. But then there's another side of artists and musicians that are more about theory, whether it's color theory, music theory, just they know how to put the pieces together. For me, I think it's kind of half-half. I think for you it's half-half, maybe not. But I'd love for you to talk upon that and how that might also apply to other areas that you're involved with, whether it's work or professional. How do you balance those two sides out?
So I think if we go back to those like 1999, I'm starting to play out a lot more. I really was it benefited me so much as a musician. I got to cut my teeth with a guy named Mark Ribler in town. He's the music director for Little Steven's band, Darlene Love. And so mind you, I'm like 22. Coming from an area that had no one, now all of a sudden, this guy is taking me and my drummer at the time, who I spoke about earlier, and bringing us out on all these trio gigs, all up and down the Jersey Shore. And I'm playing with a guy that I literally would put up on stage, you name it. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jeff Beck, John Mayer, you name it. Mark Ribler can go up on stage with them and not only hold his own, have them look over like he belongs up here with us. And so I got to look at him. I got to look at, once I went to Tony C and the Truth and was in that band with Chris Bono and Tobias Ralph, who was in his mid-30s, one of the top drummers in New York City. I'm looking at these guys, realizing with my left analytical brain, these guys have the musicianship, the artistry, and the ego. Mark Ribler will tell you, you have to have an ego to go to those places. If not, you're not going to put in the time on that guitar. You're not going to, if you said Chris Bono's a dick, that's what's made him a great guitar player. Like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be better than all of you in all these regards. I don't have that in me. I know I don't. That ego is so small in me. And I also knew at that time, looking around at these guys, God, I'm never going to be that. That was part one of it. Part two was those guys are that good and they're running around going from gig to gig to gig to try to get $100 here, $200 there. And I knew that that's not what I want to do either. As much as I love it, I'd rather just go out on the weekend and play with some buddies and do it in that way than be running around dealing with artists. And we're going to go a little forward here, but artists are nuts. The main artists that that got the record deal or that you're supporting in the band, you're realizing, oh man, half of them aren't even excited to be there. The insecurity, the ego, so much, and you're looking around going like, God, they don't even want to play these gigs and do this. Why do I want to give my time and energy? So I saw a lot of that. So once we went through that major push with Lava Records and everything fell apart with the person with mental problems, I said, that's it. I'm going back to my buddies in mortgages. He's making tons of money. I know I could do that. I have a finance background and did it for about 2 years back in Jersey. We opened up a shop. Market collapses and I'm going, I'm really miserable. I'm so miserable going to an office. So I'm still trying to balance what can I find and what can, I'm in my 30s at this point now. I'm not even in my 20s.
Mm.
And I'm looking at my friends that didn't go the artist route that are all making good money. But I also said to myself, you know what? Not all of them are happy. In fact, a lot of them are miserable. So that's also something I need to figure out and balance too. I don't want to just make money. I'm making money and I'm miserable. So that doesn't work. A friend of mine from at the university who ended up signing as a management deal, Secondhand Serenade at the time, was like, hey, this guy's I think we're going to get him a big deal. He's doing the MySpace thing. He's #1. Why don't you just come out to LA with me just to hang? And I needed a break. I was like going nonstop with work. No intentions of playing. I get there and Insecure Singer comes running out. Hey, I hear you're going to be in my band. And I'm going, well, maybe I'll do both. So before you know, like overnight, he had a big record deal. Daniel Glass signed him, and we were off to the races. And for the first 2 tours, I was on a tour bus every day at 7 a.m., whether I was it was always 7 a.m. East Coast time. So even if I was on the West Coast, I would be up. I'd be sitting in the front of the bus with my laptop, answering all the guys. I was still co-managing the mortgage company remotely because I couldn't leave my buddy hanging. So I'd be playing gigs all night, hanging out on the bus until 3, 4 in the morning. And then a couple hours later, everybody's sleeping till sound check. And I'm doing both. Once again, I got to make it work. That point, I realized I'm not going back to an office. I just can't do it. I knew it wasn't fair to my friend that I was still going to manage. I said, I need to walk away from this. Secondhand just kept climbing. Had a pretty good run. Then once again, I got to the point where this artist isn't doing it for me, not really being a good person. I got to get out. And I got out, and I just started saying, if I'm going to play with anyone, I want to know that I could treat them as a friend and they could treat me as a friend. And that's when I started going back and forth to Nashville, really realizing there's a great network of people down here. There's amazing people that don't have that LA or New York guarded thing or insecure thing. And I started getting work. It would be on and off. So I started looking around and saying, well, what's there to do around here outside of going to an office, and gives me flexibility that I can have the best of both worlds. And that was like Airbnb, handyman stuff. I always knew how to do that. And I shortly found out that just like every other industry around here, or now in the rest of the world, you can't get anyone to show up for work. So I took the time to kind of build that up. And then I got into my 40s and I said, I don't want to be out on the road anymore. I don't want to make the kind of money that I was making 10 and 15 years ago and still make. Musicians are like the only industry that I know of that whatever you were making in 2007 and 8, they still want to pay you the same in 2023 to go. And in fact, they actually want to pay you a little bit less.
Yeah.
And every tour you're fighting going, wait, no. Why are we renegotiating my rate? This is what I cost to go out. And eventually I got to the point, I don't want to do that. But how do I continue to do what I love to do, which is create? So I had a friend in LA that I met throughout mutual friends, and he did really well in doing like trailers for movies. And I'm a TV guy. I love watching great series. I love when I'm watching a series like Westworld or Game of Thrones. I love listening to the music. I'm not a talented songwriter. So I'm in Nashville, and you want to talk about incredible songwriters. It's like watching John Mayer play guitar every night here, listening to songwriters, or like my friend Gordon Brown back in Long Branch. Incredible songwriters. And they all say, you could do it. Listen, no, that's like saying John Mayer going, you could play guitar, Jay, just play guitar. It's like some people,
Yeah.
Stevie Wonder is Stevie Wonder not because he practiced every day, even though he did. It's because God gave him a gift that you and I don't have. And I knew I didn't have that songwriting thing. But I was at that point started to listen to trailer music, started listening to music cues and finding this emotional attachment and this ride you could do without a lyric. And something drew me to that. So I said, let me start working on this. JJ out in California saw that I was hungry. Once again, what can I do? How can I help? First 3 years, he helped me with everything. And every year since that, where it's been mutual, I help him, he helps me. And it took a while, but last year I finally got together with a gentleman who moved here from California who has tons of TV shows. And so I'm just composing for TV right now. And when I feel like making a couple extra bucks, my phone rings. It's Airbnb. Hey, we got someone who broke a bed. We got someone who did this. I could say no to it, but why would I? They need a service done. It's quick. I can get it done. I could take a break, come right back and do it. So at 46 next week, Jay, I'll be 46. I know.
Almost birthday, man.
I know. On Wednesday, actually this week. Yeah. Tomorrow's my birthday.
Oh, Jesus. That's right. All right.
Yeah, I'm finally in a place where I feel like, okay, this is great. Like I can balance my creative side with a little bit of the business side. I don't have to be a multi-millionaire, but I just want to have a life where I can live and enjoy my life, see friends, spend time with my wife, the dogs, and not be running around for other people's agendas. I don't know that if that's a very long, drawn out, like kind of thing that
I would expect nothing less of you, John Harvey. It's a great perspective you offer, because so many people on all ends of the spectrum, wish they had the other thing. Like we all have friends that are in finance that are making like buttloads of money, and they would give anything to be a musician or an artist, And then I have so many artist friends that would like just want to make the freaking money. And you did the mortgage thing. You're doing all these different things, and it's like I'm convinced it's like a Jersey, New York, big city thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you teach that work ethic. I don't know if it's an ethnic thing or where we're both from is like such a heavy immigrant area of generations of people that came here with absolutely nothing. My grandparents came here with nothing, and to use the cliche, pulling you up by your bootstraps. There's some truth to that. That makes you tough and resilient.
My mom and grandparents came over in '56 on the Andrea Doria from a couple months before it sank from Italy, and grandfather and grandmother worked in all the factories in Asbury, mowed all the lawns in Deal. My mom was out there as a young girl and teenager, pushing the mowers, helping out, doing all that until they finally saved up enough to buy a store and open up an Italian specialty store in the '80s over there on Monmouth Road. And finally built that up. I'm going to go back to what you just said.
Yeah,
two moments where that really like stuck out to me about like you always wish you had what you didn't have. 2017-18, I'm getting my feet wet and starting the trailer thing, and I landed a couple trailers, nothing huge, but like they were on TV, get a nice little paycheck from them, nothing crazy. In that world, you get paid a licensing fee, so it is a one-time fee. If you see, depending on the size of the trailer or if it's worldwide, it might be, hey, here's 5,000 for that, here's 10. You got to make your splits with whoever you wrote it with, whoever got it placed. So ultimately, nothing too crazy. But I'm over NAMM, which is the music conference. The big one's in LA every year, and the small one is over here.
Yeah.
And Summer NAMM. So the bass guitar amplifier company that I always use was Aguilar Amp, and they invited me to come. And at this point, I kind of had my foot out the door with touring, but still, come on, we're going to go have a dinner. You can meet the other bass players. And I meet Merritt, who is amazing. He was on the Conan show from day one, the bass player. I meet a bunch of other guys that play with Katy Perry and all these other acts. And I mean, Kelly Clarkson, the biggest acts in the world.
Sure.
And we're all having dinner, and I'm telling them what I'm doing. And they're all going, oh, we wish we could get into that. Like, we're so tired of chasing around. I'm like, you guys are in the biggest like touring acts in the world. And Merritt just said, well, we just got word from Conan. He's leaving whatever coast he was on and going, and that's it. Finally, band's done. He goes, I'm 54. I got to find a new gig. He goes, I never thought I'd be 54 and having to look for a new gig. And at that point, it just kind of, okay, I'm on a right path here. That, I'm in my 40s now, and I'm going to start building this up. So when I'm in my 50s, I don't have the carpet taken out from underneath me going like, oh, where's my next gig? Also not being on the level of a player as these guys. And then last November, it was really funny. The guy that I do all the TV stuff for, Mr. Devin Powers, incredible human being. You want to talk left brain and right brain? Has it. This guy was the guitar player for John Entwistle from The Who, had huge record deals. You got out, and I never saw a musician put together deals like him. Got Blind Date as a show, and then went on to get every show from Naked and Afraid. He's like CSAC's top 3 writer in the world for what he brings in monthly for them and himself. On the flip side, you have Ross Gollin, who is ASCAP's top writer of the year, mutual friends of ours out in LA. So I'm out in LA in November to see my buddy whose birthday it is, mutual friend Ross. I knew Ross from the Secondhand Serenade days. And this guy has one of the biggest podcasts in the world on songwriting, the biggest. It's called And the Writer Is. He's got all the number 1 hits. He's got a whole team, and he's asking me what I'm doing, and I'm telling him. And he's going, God, I wish I could just get into TV. You're only as good as your last biggest hit. Guy's got every genre, every number 1 hit. And Devin right now, who just turned 65, who has spent his entire career crushing it in TV, is now bringing in everybody he can over here in Nashville to start getting songwriting cuts, because that's what inspires him and what he wants to accomplish next. And so he's like, I just wish that I had what that guy had. The 2 top guys in their field, both wishing that one had what the other one had. Yeah. And I'm looking at both of them going, I guess we're never all, and that's what makes you great, is if you're never that satisfied, you just keep wanting to do more and more, as long as you can balance it and be healthy about it. But it is a good little nugget for all of us who haven't reached that yet to realize, like, enjoy the journey along the way, because once you get what you want, Tony Robbins always says it, it's the journey really that is the thing that you appreciate the most in retrospect when you look back. So stop every day, have gratitude, have gratitude for what you have, what you're working on. Know that your journey is not Devin's journey. It's not this guy's journey. It's Jay's journey. This is John's journey. And realize you can be inspired by people, but know that you gotta appreciate and give gratitude every day. And it's tough with social media when you see that everybody's got the best life in the world on a screen. Everybody's got the best life in the world, Jay, on a screen. Like, it's all roses. It's beautiful. The kids don't cry. You're not running around thinking like, oh man, am I doing the right thing? Everything is roses. So we gotta shift our perceptions. Yes. and perspectives, and realize that enjoy the journey along the way.
You say it laughingly, but it's actually true. That's why I called the podcast this, because I feel like we've had, you and I, and then other friends of mine who are in similar worlds, have had so many conversations. Dave Fowler is a great example of that, where you get on these crazy topics and you realize how other people think, other ways of viewing things. We get so stuck in our own head of this is how things are. I feel like when I look at social media, I look at it differently nowadays. I'll see something that looks like someone has like a perfect life and they're running through the field in a bikini and running to their boyfriend or whatever. And it's like, but then you put yourself in the perspective of like, no, someone's following them around with a camera, and someone is like staging these like spontaneous events that are caught on film. And it's like, you realize how phony and stupid all of it is. It's so moronic to obsess over that stuff.
Also being like Jersey guys. I grew up with, God, one of my best friends in Jersey, Big Buffuma, like he would always do that. Like, especially as a young man, you might have like insecurity talking to a girl, or like it's the same thing with work, or like, hey, I want to be a musician. I don't know. We get in our own way with absolutely everything.
Mhm.
And he always had a way to just bring every person and everything down to the most basic human element. And not to be crass, but he'd like look over. He's like, oh, they all gotta take a number two. I'll say politely, like, oh, they, like you build all these things up in your head that I can't, or like I'm worried about that, and it's like at the end of the day, we're all just human beings. Like my wife always gets mad at me. She's like, you never get excited to meet if there's a celebrity, if there's this, if there's that. I'm like, well, no, I get along with them because I'm not like that, like where I'm gaga over anything. And we're all just humans. We all got to put our pant legs on.
Yeah.
We all got to take a dump in the morning. We all stink. We all like we're just humans. There's like, we're gonna have kids throwing up on us. We're gonna make mistakes. We're gonna do things like, why put that insecurity that other people are on a pedestal, and that you need to be on a pedestal, or else you're not good enough to compose or get on stage or write. That's gonna make you not good enough to begin with. That the guy Mark, when I was in my 20s. We didn't even know how to play with a metronome at the time. The guy taught us. And this guy could have been on stage with anyone, but we never got in our own way. Always just, what can we do? How do we do it? And just be a sponge and do not get in your own way with anything. It's easier said than done, but the only enemy that any of us have is right up in here.
It took me so many years of being around famous or semi, quasi-famous people that I've been working with over the years. It took me years to like realize how to act, and when you realize like you just got to be yourself, and you're like, wait a minute,
just
what?
Be yourself.
You think you have to be witty, or you think this. It took. I'm a slow learner. It took me a while to be like, all right, just be normal, just be cool,
Yeah.
And I was talking to my kids in the car the other day. We were listening to the music, and Dave Matthews came on, and Summer, my daughter, was not reminiscing, she was too little, but she was telling us, oh yeah, that was my first concert. We took her when she was like 10 months old, Dave Matthews.
Mm-hmm.
We were backstage. Stefan, the bassist from Dave, had invited us for dinner, and it took me up until that point to realize, like, oh, this super famous guy that I worship in his band just sees me as another creative person. That's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to it.
That's it.
But you know what I struggle with, John, or not struggle with, but I think there's like for me, there's like a balance, because I feel like I want or need or like the balance between like the magic spiritual side of creativity and like the reductionist side of like, oh, it's just a song, it's just work someone puts out, it's just a painting. But when I go to a museum, even though I know it's just a guy that also took a crap in the morning and puts his pants on the same way, like this guy from 400 years ago, I get myself in this like spiritual zone where it's almost like, the universe is connecting with me and all this woo-woo stuff, The same when I go to a concert that really connects with me. I know that's just a person on stage, but there's something, there's like an X factor to it that maybe it's just made up. I don't know. For me, it feels real. No, you're shaking your head no. What do you think?
No, I agree with you. There is an X factor. There's an energy that if you're a band and you're firing on all cylinders, that is working together. If you're listen, you can paint by numbers and paint something that looks beautiful by painting by numbers. You could be a songwriter and get things through the seams and timing works out right, and you're literally just painting by numbers. But there's something truly like cosmic and the energy level of those artists that truly have an expression to give, and they channel this energy. You tell the difference like immediately.
Yeah.
When you see a guitar player who's moving his fingers 100 miles an hour, and you're like, wow, that's pretty impressive. He can move his fingers really fast, versus the guy who can play 3 notes,
right.
and you're like, it just hits you and goes right through you. And same thing with a painting. So there is a balance.
Yeah.
And the great artists like yourself that have that inside of them want to find that, because you don't want to just paint by numbers, but you also want to balance, how do I efficiently work and do things. I think that's healthy. I think that's good. I know the people that don't have that side, that are just the artist side, and eventually you got to finish the song, like 2.5 years later, you're still like caught on a snare drum or caught on something. It's like, at that point, nobody cares about that. They like get the feeling across, get it out there, and have confidence in that energy that came through you. And once again, don't get in your own way. So I think you do need a balance. Where do you feel on having that balance? Because I know you have to deal with art, and art is both a passion, but then also when you're making a living off of it, it's commercial. So how do you balance love of art and commercial side of it?
I'm going to answer that in a second, but first I want to touch upon something you were saying about the idea of that guy on stage or that guy behind the easel from 500 years ago. We're all the same. The way I've come to reconcile that, I believe, is it's almost like if you went to where JFK was assassinated. You're in this spot. It's just the ground. There's a curb over there. There's some traffic lights. But that place, something happened at that place that was next level. That was monumental. Something happened in different places, and that place becomes almost like eerie or connected. And I feel like the artists, the musicians, as I've gotten out of, oh my God, I'm a fanboy, and just realized that musician or that artist that I admire, they were the vessel where something great happened. And it's almost like being in the presence of a place or a person is almost the same thing. It's like you're in this spiritual, you're around the presence of greatness, but more so you're connected a little bit to them, and
yes.
by essence they're connected to something else. And that's I think what we feel. But to answer your question, the way I view it, the right left brain thing, I try my best to compartmentalize. So when I'm back here at my easel, I try to only wear the hat of like the very connected spiritual artist. I try to be just an artist in every sense of the word, like to the point where it feels like everything I'm doing is the most important thing in the world. And it also feels like this is complete garbage and this is idiotic. But it's just all those emotions, all those feelings, just trying to pull in something that's beyond me. And a lot of the process for me when I'm painting, when I feel most connected, I'll feel that burst of inspiration, and then I lose it. And then for the next hour, I'm trying to get it back. And then I experience it for 30 seconds. I'm like, oh my God, there it is. I'm so connected. Oh, I lost it. And then once that process is done and I eventually have like a painting, then I put on the marketing guy hat, and then the left brain stuff kind of takes over. And that left brain marketing guy can't really deal with things on the same wavelength as that weird artist tripper guy that was just painting an hour or two ago.
Right.
That's sort of how I do. But I'll say this before I end. Even with that said, like during the super tapped in side of the process, there's moments where the frequencies are not coming into me, and I still have to rely on the left brain color theory stuff.
Yeah.
So I think, and I'm trying really hard to get that with music. Like I'm trying to improve my guitar playing. I'm trying to learn a little bass and a little drums because I love the process of making something go from completely foreign to completely fluent. I've never experienced what you experience when you pick up a bass and you could just play something or just speak. So I think you have to have the fluency, which comes probably a lot from the left brain, and the looseness and the connectedness of the right brain thing.
Do you find that in your medium of art with painting, do you find a lot of times, like even if you take a step back and you're not searching for something, that I call them, the Bob Ross happy little accidents, they just appear, and then they're actually, you love living with them?
Oh yeah. You're saying, do I find, like, yeah, so much so, like, I thrive on that. Like I'll look for opportunities to have those things happen. So much so that sometimes some of my best paintings will start out because the grain of wood on the panel that I'm painting on, it's showing me something that's there. Or I'll have a super rough sketch, or I'll spill a drop of paint, and I'm like, oh my God, that's the exact color that would work right now. Holy shit, like just poof. Yeah, I try to have a lot of those woo-woo moments. Like I'll be painting and I'll have it's called a mall stick to rest your hand on to stabilize.
Right.
And sometimes during the process, I'll accidentally drop the stick or it'll hit something. And I'm like, okay, the universe is telling me something.
You trust the process, right?
You have to.
Yeah.
You have
to. I find myself doing that too, just even composing commercial music for TV stuff. And sometimes, like you, I'm not motivated right now. But then I remind myself, well, it's commercial, so let's just work through it. And then sometimes, unlike a song where you have a chorus and a verse and a pre-chorus, and people that don't record music don't know this, but you listen to it and play it back and edit and play it over and over and over again ad nauseum, that you're falling asleep. You hear it in your sleep. You hear it nonstop. Commercial music, which has no lyric to it, that doesn't happen. So you could go back a week later and go, I did that. And I remember a few of them, I'm like just forcing myself through the process. And is this good? Is it not good? Let's just trust the process, trust the happy accidents. And then you go back a week later, 2 weeks, a month later, and you're like, wow, that was actually really, really good. I did that? Kind of thing. Or like, oh, I painted that, I don't know. So I feel like you need to trust the process a lot.
It's almost like as if people could step into an artist or a musician's mind and experience the turmoil that you experience every time. If you're doing it in a way where it's not just a formula, like if it's not just like I'm the artist that does this or I'm the musician that does songs like this, if it's really pushing boundaries, you inevitably go through this process of like, I'm freaking amazing. Oh my God, I suck. This is going nowhere. Oh, I did it. Like it's like up and down, up and down, up and down. It's such a crazy experience to go through, and I feel as though the more you can take that lesson and apply it to other areas of life, which I know you're really good at, that the idea of like if you're trying something new and you experience the feeling of like I suck at this or this is going nowhere, or it's wrong, you intuitively know if you stick with it, it will work out.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that that's a lesson from from music that carries through to other things?
Yeah, and even once again, if you're looking at other people's situations or you're not quite where you want to be, if you can take every stage and appreciate the process, once again, just be in the moment, and they're all learning experiences. If you might be like, oh, you got to go on tour, you got to, play to 60,000 people overseas, you got to do that. If you saw for as many of these that were coming, there were 10 or 15 of those,
right?
Where you could get down on yourself and, oh man, we were supposed to be the biggest thing. Why is the singer out to well? The reason why you have a record deal is because the singer's out to lunch. I was just at yoga yesterday, and a guy who left the music industry and a record label, he's like, oh, the ego on all these people, I couldn't take it. And even with Christian music, you're supposed to be like against the ego, but you have the biggest egos. And I go, yeah, but the ego is what makes that great guitar player great. I'm not talking on a personal level. I'm just talking about that craft. And so you appreciate all of it when you go along, and then those things lead to downfalls and pitfalls and tours getting canceled and all these other things. But they also got you there. So you learn from all these things and you adjust to what works best for me. How do I fit into these things? How do I navigate them? I got plenty of friends that are my age that are perfectly fine with navigating through that, and they do great at it. They do absolutely great, and they go with the flow and they make a living, and that's good for them, and bless them for that, because they're great at what they do. I want to introduce you to another buddy of mine. Maybe you'll do a podcast with him. He was on every biggest tour in the world, from Rihanna to, and I know we're running close on time here, but he was out with every major Lady Gaga. Everybody gave him offers. And spiritually, he's such a beautiful human being. He has a great life. He does great in music, but he walked away from touring. All of that upper echelon stuff, because he said spiritually, we're casting spells every night on 60,000 people. I'm looking around at all the satanic symbolism and all of that thing going on. And he goes, I can't do, my soul won't let me do this anymore. Really interesting guy like that. So even though he achieved what everybody else did, he looked around and said, this isn't right for my soul. I'm going to take my talents and go work with other people like Kashmir and all these other great people that live in a great environment and have the same belief system, the same kind of cosmic energy as you. And if you can find that, I think ultimately you fight to get to where you want to get to. And then once you climb that mountain, you look around and say, what do I need? And that's always important to think about too. What do you as an artist need?
You know what? I'll bet you there's people listening that have or would say something like, when I was younger, I used to play guitar, I used to play drums, I wish I could draw, I used to make pottery, whatever. And somewhere along the lines, we think that's no longer important because why? It doesn't make me any money. Right. It's wasting my time. I should be doing something else. I was just doing this mural project with 8th graders, so I just left the school a couple hours ago, and they were talking about math, which is why I'm thinking about this. And when I was a student, I didn't like learning math in school, even though I enjoy math now. And I didn't realize that math is one of those subjects that if you learn it, you may not use these things later in life so much, but it trains your brain into solving problems in a way that you normally would not use. So maybe you're not going to use algebra in your 40s, but guess what? You might see life in a scenario of this is a variable, that's a variable. If I move some things around, it kind of balances. And listening to you talk, I'm seeing the connection there with music and art. People listening that used to do these things and now poo-poo it as like a waste of time. I think art and music are those in that same category of like taking something from nothing and creating something out of your mind, and in the process solving a numerous amount of problems and overcoming that and having something to show for it. I think that really does train your mind in other areas of life if you allow yourself to go through the process without stopping. So many people, I'm sure you get your version of this, will tell me, oh, I couldn't paint that looking at one of my paintings. It would take me 5 years. And I inevitably have a sarcastic Jersey answer where I'm like, okay, well, take 5 years and go make a painting. Like, what the hell's the rush? Like, if you're telling me in 5 or 10 years you could paint your version of great, whatever that means for you, why would you not do it? And yet so many people fall on the process because it's painful, it's uncomfortable, it makes you feel like a failure, blah, blah, blah.
I think it's also a lot of what our matrix is of the societies that we live in, where priorities in life, especially under the current system that we're in, we were never brainwashed as a child to just do those things. We were brainwashed to go to school, sit in a factory, you have to work, you have to get into debt, you have to be part of this broken system that it's pretty obvious right now to anybody who's looking around is failing and not really working. At the core of it, I think it works. But I think once man gets involved and ruins anything, whether it be the church, whether it be, like when people say, oh, the Catholic Church and all these things, I say, yeah, I know the Catholic Church and all. You're talking about men. But if you look at the book and you look at the word or in spirituality and Buddha, you're going to find very important things to learn and live life about, like whether you're reading the Torah, whether you're reading the Bible, whether you're reading the Quran. One of the most talked about topics in absolutely every one of them is usury. Do not have usury. We live in an entire system now that is nothing but usury. That's nothing new. That was around.
What do you mean by usury? Can you go into that?
I can go into it. Usury is the practice of lending money with interest. So the second most talked about topic in all of the Bible is usury. Okay. the Torah forbids it. In the Quran, they forbid it. So right now, the Muslims' faith is pretty much the only one that still practices it. If you are to buy a house in a Muslim country, they do not charge you interest on it. If you are to take out, put money in a bank in the United States, they sign off, we don't want interest. It is verboten. Like I said in the Bible, second most talked about, do not have it. What that does is once, like in 1913, we had Jekyll Island. That's when the bankers came in. Congress was asleep for the weekend. They went down to Jekyll Island and they signed everything over for the Federal Reserve, which is neither federal or run by our government, private entity, and they charge interest on everything. So now we have put ourselves in such a system. It has taken down every empire in the world since the beginning of its existence, outside of a cataclysmic event, has been usury. This is something that the ancients knew about, and we're living in the system. So this system of usury that we all live in has created everything that we're seeing today, which is hyperinflated homes. Your home that you're living in New Jersey, I'm sure is at least a $500,000, $600,000 home. The home should probably be about $150,000. I bought my house down here in 2015. It was $250,000. It's worth $550,000 right now. It's not worth $550,000. It's worth $550,000 because every Tom, Dick, and Harry who keeps a decent credit score based off of usury can go and borrow $550,000, pay interest on it, and that's going to take the market and the rest of the homes and bring up the market value, when in fact it should only really be about $150,000 that you could have paid off in a couple of years by working hard. So compound that across the board, credit cards to everyone. We live in this system now where I can't just wake up and be with my family. I have to get on that parkway. I've been indoctrinated as a child. I got to get on the bus. I got to get to school. I got to sit in a Rockefeller fantasy camp here of a organized structure, and yeah, you might get a class where you could do a little art. Go ahead, go do a little art, but be trained to be on time, live in the system. So it's unfortunate. I don't think a lot of people are just like, I'm too scared to do art. They're really just inundated with life. You know, I grew up, I was an artist. I drew. Erin, my wife, is always going, why don't you draw more? I'm like, I don't know. I'm trying to pay the bills. I'm trying to do things, life really in the system that we have gets you. So what I try to do to keep some sort of art in me is I won't go to Hallmark and buy a card. I like to draw, it's a little bit more personal. I'll draw a friend or family member an anniversary or a birthday card. Do I wish a lot of times maybe I should go get some paint and do all that? Yes, all the time. And then I go, when am I doing this? And then I look at a friend like you who has 3 kids and a dog and all these things going on. I'm like, how? Erin and I say that all the time. How do they do it? It's really tough. It's tough for everyone.
It is tough, man. No kidding. Well, there's a couple things you opened a can of worms and some topics here. But that being said, you know what? I turned my fancy red light off here. Let me make it look fancy here. Wait.
There you go.
There we go. Now it looks fancy again.
Yeah, you're fancy.
Whew, man. You went into some stuff here, bro.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so I don't want to go too deep in a rabbit hole, but this whole usury thing is interesting because what does the alternative look like? If you're someone that has money and you want to lend someone money and there's a risk involved, it makes sense to me that you should get some money back for your risk. And then on the flip side of that, I'm wondering if it's more of I think it's more of a problem. The whole, what's it called? Fractional, what's that called? When your money, you deposit $1 in fractional reserve banking. There you go. When you put $1 into a bank, all of a sudden they can lend out $9 that doesn't actually exist.
Right.
Between inflation and then just creating money that's not actually there.
Right. Well, that's how you get inflation. So this goes back to usury. It goes back to the interest again. So let's say Jay Alders let's say you have $10 million. You want to open up the bank of Jay Alders. The Federal Reserve will back you up tenfold, so you can lend out $100 million. I need a home. It's $1 million. I come to you. 10 people come to you. They got their tent. Your $10 million gone, but now 90 more people come to you and want $1 million home. They all get that home, right? Based off of the system that we have, which has inflated the price to be $1 million when it shouldn't have. Now, all of a sudden, manipulations happen in the market. The can gets kicked down the road far enough, and like it did in 2007 and 8, and now everything goes like that. You have your winners and your losers. Now, me, who borrowed $1 million from you that you didn't even have, lose the house. You get to keep the house while you're getting bailed out by the Federal Reserve. Mm-hmm. So problem number one, which is a big problem, and which is putting us in the inflation state that we're in, amongst other things. When you don't lend on interest, what happens is the whole of society, you're a guy, instead of profiting off of the detriment of others, like the current banking system does, and inflating everything, eventually that bottom comes out and the can can't be kicked down the road enough. So it's short-sighted. Those who lend and help, they actually build up the communities. And when those communities are built up, then you could see the benefit from not interest, but goods, services, almost like Henry Ford did. Let's make these things affordable. Let's give them a good salary. And then you could build up the system from the bottom. I will give you a very controversial, very controversial, just on a little side note, history lesson. I was listening to a rabbi speaking about this, and maybe we'll get you the link. And he said, in the 1930s, after World War I, Germany was the most poor country out of first world country. They were literally taking wheelbarrows full of money. They were bringing it out to the street and burning it to keep warm. They were destroyed after World War I. Mm-hmm. After that, when our least favorite person in history comes along, Mr. Hitler, before all of the nonsense really started, he said, we need to do a couple things here. And this is from the rabbi, not from me. He goes, number one, we have Sodom and Gomorrah in Germany. It is debauchery. We need to kick that out. We need to get back to family values. Number two, the moneylenders. All the moneylenders in here, we need to round them up. We need to get rid of them. While he did that, what he said was, off of not a socialist, but a national socialist system, what we want to do is incentivize all of our people to build up the economy from the ground up. So what they did was they said, for every child that you have, at that time, an average home was $1,000 to build. There's going to be no interest. There's no more money lenders. There's no interest on anything. We are going to give you a $250 tax incentive for every child that you have. You have 4 children, your home's paid for. You have 1 child, a quarter of it's paid for. You have 2, half of it's paid for. In the course of 4 years, they went from burning money in the streets to being one of the top number 1 countries in the world with the biggest military. Now, from there, Hitler did what he did. I'm talking about the rise up of those 4 years. By just getting rid of usury, you were able to take a country that was burning their dollars in the street to having one of the highest reserves and the most powerful countries in the world at the time. Mm-hmm. So this goes back to Bible times, Torah and Quran, that these kind of things there's a reason why they told us and warned us against it. It will bring down societies. And we have seen 3 major collapses in our time, Jay, and we're due for another really big one. It's not sustainable. It can't happen. And a usury system ultimately will lead to that. It has in all of history.
I feel like that's a worthy topic of exploration, but I don't know if we're going to get into it
No,
at full length.
no, we're not.
Even though I really want to, because I'm fascinated by the whole World War II thing. My maternal grandparents escaped the Holocaust, so I have a very personal connection to it. I'll without opening up the can of worms completely, I'll just leave that topic with saying that as a kid, I would hear from my grandparents about how the whole Nazi Germany, Poland, how it all happened, the rise of anti-Semitism, what it was actually like to be there. None of it made sense to me as a kid. I just did not get it. Like, how? Why did people just listen? How did people just become blindly compliant? None of it made sense until the COVID thing happened. And a lot of people got in trouble for saying that. I don't give a fuck. I'll say it too.
No.
Because I guess what? I have grandparents that came from the Holocaust, so I have permission to say it. Until the extreme authoritarian, totalitarian-ish behavior during COVID, that's when I was like, oh, wow, look how fast it could go from people getting along and being nice to each other to turning in their neighbors and family because they had gatherings that were too big, or this guy next door is not wearing his mask, or, oh my God, they left their house and they're hanging out on the beach, or othering each other on both sides. They're evil, they're an existential threat, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, holy fuck, that's how it happened.
That's how it happened.
Terrifying.
Right.
Terrifying.
You never know until you experience. We could read what we want in any books, and you can kind of understand. But until you get heartburn, you have no clue what heartburn feels like. Until you give birth, we have no clue what giving birth feels like. We don't know. So that was it, man. That was the first time you're looking around, going like, oh, this is. You got to remember, the human mind is so easily manipulated.
Right.
We're our own worst enemies, let alone if there is a outside force with all the resources in the world to learn, understand the brain, and manipulate the brain. And brother, not to go down rabbit holes, but every side, whatever any of us think that we know in this matrix here, we are being deceived from an early age on of everything going on, and we're being manipulated. This is why our neighbors are fighting with one another when they shouldn't be. You know what?
To bring this full circle, we had spent some time talking about the necessary balance of like right-left brain, but studying Nazi Germany, studying the Roman Empire, studying any of these fallen empires or societies, there is a need for the right and left. You need the innovative, creative, artsy, fartsy poets, artists, musicians. You need them to push the limits, and you need the stability of a more conservative population, the people that are good with numbers and accountability. And we're so focused on right versus left, when in essence, if you look in history, it doesn't matter if the totalitarianism, the authoritarianism, the dictatorships are on the left or on the right. It's not the right or the left flavor of these things. They can come, and they have come on both sides. We had with Nazi Germany before Hitler came about, there was a strong communist party that came about. Then you have a strong right, insane dictator on the other side. They both suck. Yep. It's just the forcing of people to think and be and do a certain thing, and the elimination of the right-left brain balance that we need, I feel.
I think the really unfortunate thing that happened with the breaking of people's brains in 2016 and 2020 is that those voices that are supposed to be comedians and artists, that are supposed to be literally raging against the machine at all times, something happened where brains got broken, and those that are literally supposed to be speaking truth to power are the most conformed, scared people, that their brains got broken and they got nervous and scared, and do not talk about those things that you just talked about, or are afraid to do it. It was really, you think about that, like how we couldn't even understand or comprehend what happened in Nazi Germany, but just look at what happened here, that all of the left, that it was supposed to be anti-government, anti-big pharma, anti all these things, all of a sudden are yelling at people to conform to the machine and not rage against it. Right. Do you know what kind of mind manipulation and operation that was done on the population for that to occur, it's pretty mind-blowing if you think about it.
One of the best memes I saw, there was a lot. One of the best ones I saw that stuck with me during the COVID thing was that one with Rage Against the Machine, and it was like something like, fuck you, we will do with you what you tell us, or something like that. And it's so true. They were raging against the machine, and they're like, people in the band were like, no, do what they tell you to do. They're right. What?
You can't come to our concert.
Right.
You just unless you conform to the machine. Come on, it's for the greater good.
Just the idea, like, I don't care where people fall politically. I'm friends with people on all sides of the spectrum. I know you are too. But anyone that is a creative person, especially, how can you possibly be against freedom of speech or against being challenged? I feel like being an artist, so much of that is being challenged throughout your process, whether you're listening to music or trying to dissect a painting that you're working on and understand. The idea of not wanting to be challenged and not wanting to have that pressure put on you with a differing opinion or a differing outlook, that is so wrong. That is so wrong.
Yeah. People's brains were broken. I always use the analogy when I talk to friends when we go down on these kind of rabbit holes. I always say, have patience with people. You got to have kindness no matter what. But I learned when I was in high school, I didn't go to Ocean Township High School, but I went to a few of their proms with friends of mine, and they would have an after party. So the kids wouldn't go out and get drunk. They would go to this gym where they have swimming, basketball, and dancing and arts and entertainment all night. And there was a guy that would come in every year. He was a hypnotist, and probably lived in his parents' basement, like probably mid-30s guy. And he every year would say, I can hypnotize 6 to 7 out of 10 people. And every year I tried to go up, and I really wanted to be hypnotized. I couldn't be hypnotized, but then I would watch other people really being hypnotized. Yes. Doing the wackiest stuff, right? And then I started thinking, I'm like, this is a guy who read a few books and watched a few videos, who lives like on a means of performing for high schools. What do you think the government and those in power with endless supplies of money who own the government? When I say our government, it's not our government anymore. That's we're supposed to be the government, but we're no longer those who can afford to buy the government are the ones that are running. What do you think they have the resources to do with an unelected spy apparatus to know what your likes are, your dislikes are? I have a buddy who wrote the book Fifth Generation Warfare with General Flynn, and he's run operations all over the world. And they talk about there are now digital clones of absolutely every one of us. And what's a digital clone? It's not what you think it is. They'll sell you on all the good stuff, but nothing's for free. Your Facebook app, your Twitter, like what we're doing right now on Zoom. This is all being recorded. They know if we do A to Jay Alders, his reaction will be, if we do A, it'll be 90% this. If we do B, it'll be 92% this. So through technology now and the AI and the predictive algorithms that they have, they are able to now take digital clones of every man, woman, and child. And it's even more accurate for children because from the time they're born to on, they have a digital footprint. You and I, we have one, but we're in the dinosaur age now. We're becoming dinosaurs. So now if we want to persuade the population to go over here, if we do event A, we have a 92% chance that we will get the result that we want. So this has been going on now for the last 10 years. It's really ramped up in 2020. And you're seeing a lot of manipulation on the population worldwide, including America, of that's how you break brains. That's how you get artists to conform to the machine and not rage against the machine. That's how you get people to turn in their, it's down to a science right now. And we all have to be aware of that and have compassion and understanding for that. Would be like getting mad at your girlfriend at that party in high school because she got hypnotized and started making out with a pillow up on stage. And you're like, why are you making out with a pillow in front of her? Like, literally, broke her brain, for those few
like
seconds.
At least have her make out with another chick in the audience. Come on.
Right. Yeah. Come on. Something like that. But you know what? So I think we need to have compassion and understanding that people aren't dumb. We're all humans, and we're all very easily manipulated. And I'm manipulated. My point of views of things have been altered and put through lenses. I get it. I try to be as open when it comes to anything, art, business, understanding of what people are doing. You have to try to be that way. And I think the more we could do that and throw little breadcrumbs out, like usury, I don't expect to give a class on usury, but hopefully a few people will do what I did when I heard about it and start looking into it and going like, whoa, this completely makes sense. Really, really makes sense. And there's a reason why it's been in our history books and books like the Bible and Torah and Quran for forever.
I think it's a problem that a lot of people are extremely cemented in their views, and they are unwilling to do the work to be able to know whatever the other side is for them, to the point where you can debate your own view. For instance, I have many strong views. You have many strong views. However, I'm constantly thinking about the beliefs that I have that I'm most passionate about, that I believe the most are true. I'm always thinking, like, what else could be the truth here? What could be another side, even if it's a side that I don't agree with, that I don't foresee myself ever changing my mind on? I'm always thinking, like, but maybe there's another way to see this. Maybe it doesn't have to be this way. I feel like any political, lifestyle, societal view that I have, artistic view for that matter too, it could be challenged and should be challenged, not only by other people, but myself. And I feel as though people are not doing the hard work to do that, which I think is making art less impactful. It's making music potentially less impactful, and it's making getting along with each other much more difficult.
Right. Well, once again, that was the mind programming. So you went from, in the 1970s and early 80s, you would have news shows where you always had to have opposing views. You'd have a right, you have a left, you have a person who believed in whatever they were talking about, person who didn't. And since the last 2 decades, that has eroded away. It's here's a channel for this and only that. Here's a channel for that and only that. And so you create that divide. People aren't challenging anything. And in America especially, you really made everybody, for the most part, very, very comfortable. They're like, no matter how bad it's getting out there, what we see going on, we're still putting gas in our car, like, as even though it's up to $3 or $4, still putting it in, even though inflation's through the roof and you're not saving money, and but we're still going to the grocery store. So it's part of a game plan is you make people comfortable enough, and then once they're fat and happy enough, they're not going to fight back. And then when you can easily manipulate at that point, you've indoctrinated them that there's only one opinion if you watch this. There's only one opinion if you watch that. Meanwhile, the same person that owns this one owns that one. So they're giving you the divide. They're giving the same people that own the social networks. It's like, your TikTok, you're going to get all the things you like there. You own Twitter or Instagram, we're going to give you controversy. We're going to give you, like, to get you more engaged. This is all manipulation going on. One of my favorite memes during COVID was, it was Duncan Trussell. Excuse me. And it was like a waterfall, and it was like, just think there's some poor schmuck sitting without a phone near a waterfall right now, not realizing that he needs to be afraid of something.
That is so fucking true. There's so much truth to that it reminds me of the fact that where we put our attention is what becomes our reality. And I know so many people, myself included at times, but people that I love, people that I know, who become so obsessed, and justifiably so at times, with news, with politics, with all these different things. And I get it. There's turmoil, there's things to be worried about. But on the same note, whenever you place this much attention on one thing, you're becoming an expert in that thing, but then you're negating these other sides of yourself that are yearning to
brother.
be expressed. You're
Yep.
losing the artist, the musician, the writer, the bowler, the shooter, the whatever other things you like to do. There's some people in my life that in particular I'm thinking about as I say this, and I'll think, God, I love you, but why are you becoming an expert on world events? Like, how is that serving you besides just having things to debate or talk about?
Right.
People will say, oh, I want to do all these other hobbies, blah, blah, blah. Well, get off Netflix, get off the news a little bit. I don't know, man. It just seems messed up. And I want to ask you this, and we'll wrap up in a few because my kids are getting ready to get home from school soon. But I'm wondering if, all right, let's just play an imaginary world where money's not an issue, making a living is not an issue. There's magical world peace in the world. You, John Harvey, with all the different things you're doing, let's stick to the creative side of this. What would your creative life, what would the dream-like version of your creative life be if there was no other realistic worries that had to do with that thing? Would you be in a big band? Would you be writing or working on making songs? Would you be just playing on the front porch and not giving a crap about anything else? What would that look like for you?
I think, and it's so weird because it's obtainable, but also life. We all subscribe to it. We have other people that we love, that we live with, that don't have the same aspirations as you. But what I think would be a perfect life is not in the middle of nowhere, but far enough outside of a city where maybe I have 14 to 40 acres. And
don't you have 14 to 48 acres right now?
I don't even have a half of an acre.
I thought you had some kind of giant compound you're building.
No.
Didn't happen?
I have a buddy out in France who's doing that.
Okay.
But
okay.
Yeah, that's who I told you about. But, not in the middle of nowhere. I still want to be able to see a neighbor's house down there, but be in a place where community means everything, where you know who your sheriff is, you have some chickens, you have some goats. I'm a big dog guy. I would love to have a ton of dogs that I could help out, and have my studio where I can go and compose and get songs and trailers, get cues and TV shows, have fun, maybe have some friends come and work on something with me in the studio. But that's about it. I think we've all subscribed to this like life that has to be like jet setting and going and crazy and nonstop. And honestly, if you're connected to the environment and to nature, for me, that's a lot more fulfilling. Like, maybe have a pond, maybe do some fishing, maybe walk through a waterfall, like those kind of things. To me, I feel like that's a good life. Jump on a horse, have a connection. I do understand people like my wife. Yeah, but then the animal dies and they don't live. I'm like, yeah, that's life. Nothing lives forever.
Right.
None of us do. Connect to what we have now, and then hopefully there's something in the afterlife that we're still connected to via energy. But that's my dream.
You know what I'm thinking about as you're saying that, I'm realizing that from an outside perspective, if people really knew us besides social media or a casual meet, I wonder how much of an anomaly we are. I have a lot of my friends who know me really well will say, Jay, you're this artist, but you're also this business guy, but you also like to go to the range and shoot guns with your friends, but you're also a vegan, but you're like a lot of contradictory things about me that don't line up with like the hippy dippy artist that people think. And you're very different with the variables, but there's some variables that also align with like, you think about a musician, I think most people would have a different lifestyle archetype than John Harvey. You have a lot of hobbies that don't necessarily align with what people think a musician is. I wonder how much of the creative population is as contradictory, and how many of us are stereotypical.
I think a lot. So you have a lot of perceptions, right, of what a musician is based off of what the media and our lens have told us, and what the big hippy dippies from the 60s and 70s had living in LA and New York. You come down to Nashville and all the biggest stars have huge hunting ranches. They have ranches. They have, lakes. Their kids are out hunting and fishing, and they go to church, and they're doing all these things that you would think that's not an artist thing to do. and they're incredible songwriters, incredible players. So I think the lens also dictates a lot of that. And I do know we are being flooded, and I mean flooded, in Nashville here from musicians and artists from LA and from New York. And when I get to talk to them, because we're always worried, like, hey, are you going to be voting and doing the same things here that you did there, which made you want to flee those places? And so many people are like, no, take me to the range. I want to shoot a gun. I want to learn how to protect my family. I want to learn how to do this. And I think it's a lot more than what our perceptions are based off of what we've been told. That's what an artist is.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you.
Your John Legends are in the minority. All right. There's that whole kind of thing. Yes. But there's always a big spotlight on that, because that is how you break people's brains. That's what we want you to believe. That's what we want you. We'll promote. And I love her. I think she's so incredible. I think she's a hard worker. I've never seen anyone put on a show like Taylor Swift. I've never seen anyone take care of her people like Taylor Swift. However, you have to realize that you are also being used. Like, you look at these things that start happening in the media world and in the world of, like, once you go from big to the biggest overnight, or once you go from nothing to that, you are playing a game that needs to be played. So we're going to start getting you on Time Magazine. We're going to start this. We're going to start the media machine because we need you down the road. And I always say, well, if it's not an operation, which it is, and I love you, come out tomorrow and go against what you were told to say. So that's free speech. Or go out and say, I don't even support this agenda anymore. Not that I support the other one. I just don't support this one. And see how quickly that carpet gets pulled out from underneath you. So everything that we're seeing is a lens, including what an artist should be and what artists really think. And that's what helped switch the brains and the thought process of the American people. Because you got people cheering on war right now that are supposed to be anti-war.
Right.
You have people cheering, artists that are cheering on lockdowns and anti-free speech and censor these people that never in a million years you would think these people would do that. So we've been
I don't
shifted.
I don't get people that can't see other sides of things. Like I mentioned, I live my life in a certain way, but people that don't live their life even close to how I live my life, I'm perfectly fine with, and I think it's only a healthy way to be.
I love you for that, and I know you got to go. We'll leave it real quick. I have a friend who is a warrior, a fighter. He was a wrestler in high school, state champion football player. He's always been and he's an artist, drummer. Always had that. That's his way. His older brother always got straight A pluses in school. Was never a warrior, fight or flight. Right? We all have it. Fight or flight. Are you going to fight or are you going to flight?
Or freeze? Right?
Flight has always served him. He's youngest partner in his firm, makes more money than that, gets to go golfing whenever he wants to go golf. And my friend over here looks at his brother and goes, how do you not see all these things? And I'm saying to him, what you got to understand is that not raging against the machine and being part of the machine and being that person in school has served him his entire life, right? Even if things start looking a little squirrely over here, you're in the trenches financially with your kids, with CRT and all these things coming to school. You're freaking out. He's not, because that schooling system and that conformity to the machine has always served him. Flight has always served him. So it is just a personality trait, same family, same bloodline, same DNA, that serves people differently. So I don't look at those people and say, I just can't understand it, because I can't, because I'm like you. I'm a warrior. I'm a fighter. I'm also one that is a compassionate person that wants to understand and be compassionate towards people. Certain people, it's served them their whole lives, and they're still putting gas in their car, and their kids still going to private school. How do you tell them that you don't understand? Why do you not see this? Because they can't right now. Through their lens, it's not possible. And all you have to do, for me, I feel like in all of life, whether it be inspiring someone to be a better artist, whether inspire someone to be a better musician, whether it inspired you want to get back to church or to the synagogue or practice boot. You don't do it by someone beating you over the head with it. You find people around you that channel that energy and that love and that prism and that field that it just oozes out of them, and you get inspired by that, and you see it, and you want to be a better artist. You want to be a better musician. You want to go back to church. You want to do these things. Your mother could tell you till you're blue in the head, like, go to church, go to synagogue, like, doesn't mean anything. You eventually get to that place. So I think the same has to be said for the compassion in other people whose brains have been scrambled and just see things through different lenses. That we have to remember that, and we have to just, what kind of example can I show without beating them over the head with it? And then leave little breadcrumbs, and hopefully they pick it up, and hopefully they're on this trail, but you left them breadcrumbs. Hopefully Hansel and Gretel will meet each other in the forest and not getting eaten by the witch together. We could work together. We could get there.
I feel the older I get, the more expensive you realize your time is, and how selective you have to be with who you share your time with, who you transact emotions and thoughts and ideas with, and because otherwise you're using up your energy, you're using up your time with people that are not serving this similar mission that you're on, or just not making your life better. And I'm proud to say that you're one of the people that I really do love spending time with, and I love our talks, and throughout this conversation I just really admire you for your integrity, and also your ability to pivot is just something that I wish I had more of that. I feel like I do have that, but the idea of going from being on stage in front of tens of thousands of people to being perfectly content sitting on a porch playing your instrument of choice, looking out at the trees, and then that ability to completely remove ego. I know I feel like I've gotten a lot better with it, but I feel as though there's been points in my career, especially during certain financial times, where I was like, you know what, even though this is who I am to the public, I should probably get another thing. But I felt that part of my ego saying, no, you'll be looked at in a weird way, or you're supposed to be this, and your ability to just be like, I don't care, like, fuck it, I'll play in front of 20,000 people, and next day I'm going to go fix someone's radiator for an Airbnb. That's truly admirable.
Thank you. I say that, especially since 2020, I keep saying this, when our speech is suppressed, when we're so worried about everyone else, that's where the control comes from. And I know me, all my friends know me, and if you want to label me a racist, like, people are so, oh, you're an anti-vaxxer. Oh, you're racist. Oh, you're an anti-Semite. Oh, you're this. Oh, like, these are controls that are put in that hit the ego and hit the person so hard that you self-center. You worry about all these things. I'm just never going to be that person. Like, I don't care what I honestly don't care what anybody calls me, because they're human. I care what the creator judges me for, and I know who I am. I know what my friends think I am, whether they're black, whether they're white, whether they're Indian, whether they're Chinese. They all know who I am. They all love me. I love them. So I'm going to be labeled with something, or like, oh, people are going to look at me that I'm not up on stage anymore, that I'm not this, that I'm not that. Once again, the lens of social media enhances that. I just want to get so far away from technology. It's beautiful. It really is. In what we have, it's beautiful, but we do have to be so careful with this. Yeah. We do. It's
coming from two guys surrounded by technology at the moment.
Well, hey Jay, this is what I say to everyone. I didn't say no technology,
right? But
were we better off in 1997 or in 2024? Yeah. And we could still make phone calls. We still had GPS. We could do those things.
Right. True. Amen to that, brother. Dude, John, thanks for making the time to chat. I love you too, man. I just love talking to you, bro. When are you coming back to Jersey? When can I see you?
This summer. Probably July we'll shoot for, and I'm going to build in enough time. We're definitely seeing each other.
Awesome, brother. All right, we'll talk soon.
All right.